Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host. Today, we're talking about Danger Force, a half-hour comedy that is currently airing its first season on Nickelodeon. Like all production across Hollywood, Danger Force shut down in response to the pandemic. However, they recently released a special episode that was filmed during the lockdown. It's called Quarantini. It's the 6th episode of season 1, and you can find it wherever you watch current Nickelodeon shows. Some listeners may be familiar with the Variety article that came out on May 8th talking about Quarantini, but we're going to dive a little deeper into the mechanics of production, and as always here on Below the Line, there may be spoilers. My guests today are crew from this show. First, Jimmy Brooks. You're the line producer and the unit production manager. Welcome to Below the Line.
Thank you for having me.
Jimmy, glad you're here. Next, returning to the show is Mike Caron. Mike, you directed the first episode of this series, and you directed the Quarantini episode.
That's right. Thanks for having me back, Skid.
Good to see you. And also returning is Robyn Willey-Pratt. Robyn, you were the first AD for the Quarantini episode.
Yes, I was. I'd like to point out I'm actually the only below the line person on this podcast.
Today, our Below the Line podcast, we have some special above the line guests. Well, glad everybody's here. Let's turn our attention to Danger Force. But before we discuss the specifics of the Quarantini episode, let's set some context for our listeners. Mike and Robyn, last time you joined me on Below the Line was season 1, episode 13, and we talked about Henry Danger, the series that ran for 5 seasons on Nickelodeon and only recently aired its final episodes. Danger Force is a direct spinoff from that show.
Correct. Direct spinoff. The Henry Danger finale, the last scene of the Henry Danger finale was the introduction of Danger Force in the school that the kids go to. So we went A to B awfully quick.
And so tell me more about how that came about, making the transition to the new show. You've got 2 returning actors, Cooper Barnes and Michael D. Cohen are both back playing the same characters, but you've got a new group of kids. Set some more context for folks so they understand what this is all about.
It was unique in that the 4 kids that became Danger Force, we started slowly introducing them over, what was it, Robyn, the last 5 episodes of season 5?
I think it was the last 5 episodes. They each had their own individual episode. And then for the finale, the last 3 episodes, or maybe last 4 episodes.
Last 4, I think they were all in those.
All in those. But then leading up to it, we had some individual episodes where they each got kind of an episode to introduce their character.
So what was interesting about it was not only were these kids being introduced on our show in the anticipation of them being Danger Force, these kids were also dropped in the middle of a 5th season, successful, long-running show with a very well-oiled machine on stage. And to their credit, they just jumped right in. They really did. Michael and Cooper were great with them. And of course, Robyn and I and everyone on the set was trying to be as accommodating as possible. But they truly came into a bit of a hurricane, as this huge show was wrapping up. They're the new generation, but they still had to, introduce themselves within, in the shadow of Jace and Ella and Riel and Sean. Very much to their credit, they held their own and held in there, but that was what made it unique. And of course, we all knew that they were going to be the new team going forward, but at the same time, we still felt it, the priority of the day was landing the plane right on Henry Danger, making sure that the show ended the best way it could. And so all attention was to that. The Danger Force as a new show, we all were excited what was coming, and obviously, but we kept it. All of us kept it on the back burner. We did not, we made a point. We really actually made a point just not to really talk about it. To be perfectly honest, we just all hands on deck to make the Henry Danger finale the best it could be.
Now, did you have a lot of continuity of crew going from one show to the next?
We did. One change was Jimmy Brooks here. Kim Sherwood was the producer UPM on Henry Danger. And then when we started the new show, Jimmy Brooks came in. So he's now the UPM producer of the show. Otherwise, the crew is the crew. I mean, it really is. The writers, many of the same directors came back, AD staff, props, everything. Everybody, I think, really. Honestly.
Almost everybody. There's some office, some little bit of office turnover and some crew here and there. But yeah, for the most part, everybody is the same except for the kids, the minors. All the minors, they switched out and got younger.
Right. Our Henry Danger minors became young adults. And
Yep. That's true. They
Sean,
weren't minor. Only Ella was a minor at that point.
I think the last time you talked about the schooling and how it was getting easier as they got older. Now you're back to square one on that front, it looks like.
Oh, back to square one.
We're definitely back to square one. Have to like dust off the cobwebs of all the rules and lots of scheduling to make sure, the writers have to have been making it so that things are shootable. Whereas before the world was their oyster, and now it's like have to do A and B stories and make sure there's just enough hours in the day to shoot all 4 of the Danger Force kids.
Now, Jimmy, let me ask you specifically. You came in, you obviously had some prep time coming up to the launch of Danger Force. What was that like for you starting out on the new show?
It was super stressful because this is my first job UPMing, line producing. I'd never done it before, and it all happened super quick. I mean, I got into the DGA November 1st, and I had the job by Thanksgiving. So it was super fast. I started December 2nd, and the remnants of Henry Danger was all still there. I mean, they weren't even off stage yet. All the sets were still there. All the sets had to come out, and it was just a ticking clock. I mean, we had to be shooting our first episode by the 27th of January, I believe, because we had to hit a March turnaround for the Kids' Choice Awards. So on top of me learning an entire new crew, I mean, more than half these people, Robyn may be one of the only people I've ever worked with that were on another show, having that, that ticking clock going and getting them out the door and trying to get us on. And it was a lot. I mean, and then learning the system, learning everybody, learning how to work with kids, how to work with, kid hours. It was stressful, but we hit the mark. We got the show done on time, got the first episode off on time, and we were ready to air March 22nd.
And you know what? I still say you're lying. You came in like an experienced champ. I mean, you never looked stressed. Knew everything. I think you're just saying it for the podcast.
Yeah.
He's very calm. He's a very, very calm UPM.
Yes.
That first episode you said you filmed in January, targeting the March 28th. Did you just go from episode to episode, and so there were a number in the cans before it went on the air?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there was, we shot 6 in a row. So we started, I think January 27th, we shot 3 in a row, had a hiatus. There was a little bit of creative mixing around because we ended up, episode 2 ended up being episode 3 that aired, I believe.
Right.
So we flip-flopped those, but the turnaround was, for a show that involves so many special effects, so many visual effects. I mean, our post team was hustling to get these episodes turned around, but within, I guess, about 8 weeks, from the time you shoot it was to the time it aired.
Which is remarkable on our show, just to say that the special effects really define, like Robyn was talking, as Henry Danger was in its 5th season, and because the minors, Jace was obviously old enough, Sean, Riel, we could write really big, a lot of big fights and explosions, and because we could have the time on set to shoot them. But with Danger Force, it's just another chapter in Henry Danger, and our shows are just as big as fights, big explosions, set dressing, special effects, post effects. So that's the part that I think started making all of our heads spin, because we were so used to 5th season Henry Danger, at least the time on stage to shoot it. Now with Danger Force, our lives are defined by 9.5 hour ticking time bombs on our kids, but we still have to do the same quality of, superhero type of episode. Jimmy's right. Post, we would barely get through the week shooting it, and then post would have to turn around and then on a much more accelerated schedule, get it ready to go to air.
And we are very lucky that we have 3 days of shooting, which most multi-cameras only have 2 days of shooting. But we have 3, and it's still, we just get it in there, but we absolutely have to have 3 days, especially with the 9.5 hours. It makes it very delightful to get off at a decent hour because there's literally nothing else to shoot usually. If there is a B story with Cooper, it usually only takes up maybe 3 or 5 minutes of the show. With the adults, it goes pretty quick when we shoot it. So maybe on a Wednesday, we're shooting a little bit late with Cooper, but then by Friday, we're just chasing the kids.
No, it's very civilized from that standpoint, Robyn's saying, it's very stressful, but at 6:30, the kids are done. And by definition, we're all done. So, we jump in the LA traffic. Yay.
Well, talk to me about what the circumstances were leading up to production shutdown. In other words, where were you guys in filming as the rumors started to come of there being issues with COVID-19? Talk to me about those days on set.
It really started, the conversations really started earlier in the week that we shut down. I mean, obviously I had read about it. I think everyone sort of had an idea that what coronavirus was, and that there was talk of, it making its way into the United States and it was spreading. The conversations really started earlier in that week, sort of the network telling me like, let's make sure everyone's washing their hands. Let's keep an open dialogue. Like, what are people's fears? Are people starting to get a little bit nervous? You make sure that you're being honest with us. So it was sort of reporting, meeting up with the medic would come in at these meetings once a day pretty much and just give us his report on who's coming in, who thinks they have a fever, who thinks they have a sore throat, sort of everyone starting to wonder if they're getting sick, how easy it is to catch. But there was no real plan as far as shutdown until probably Wednesday of that week. My production executive said, get on the same page with your executive producer and then your production executive as well. If you guys all feel like, because at this point now, people were starting to shut down around us. Warner Brothers shows were shutting down. And if we were all on the same page, if we all thought, okay, this was the time we have to stop, they would support us. So that Friday afternoon, we shut down on the 13th of March. That Friday earlier in the day, I had to sit down with my executive producer and I just said, what do you want to do? Here's what's going on. I mean, the world is shutting down around us. We're going into a hiatus. This could be the time for us to shut down. And we, at the time it was 2 weeks. So we were shutting down for a hiatus week and then we would shut down for a week of production. And his words were, you don't want to be the last one standing without a chair. So it's better to just shut down. Let's take the 2 weeks. Let's re-examine what's going on in the world. And if it's only 2 weeks, it's only 2 weeks. But if not, we don't want to be the one who's left standing. Oh, let's keep pumping out episodes. And then something bad happens on our end. So the conversation started earlier in the week of shutdown. And by the end of the week, it happened quickly. It happened in the afternoon. We were like, we're shutting down. And that was it. I mean, it was maybe 3 or 4 hours notice that we weren't coming back up on Monday.
You guys were able to finish filming on the episode of what you were trying to capture. Obviously, the episode's not complete, but you guys were able to get the episode in the can, at least from a filming perspective.
Correct. And Jimmy's right. It went so fast, like a house of cards once it went. Because even Friday morning, I had we had all called the crew together and gave kind of a speech of, look, this is what's happening, make sure wash your hands, department heads, be aware of, if you need to hire outside of our normal, like electricians or grips, for example, if you need to bring in extra bodies to complete something, Jimmy was, the marching orders were, we'd rather pay more overtime, if you will. If it takes you longer with 5 people to get it done, that's fine versus bringing in 3 other people that we have not, that's not in our normal core of people, staff wise. So we were starting to set that up, and that was Friday morning. And I think it was Friday after lunch. I think, Jimmy, that's when you whispered in my ear, I think this is it. I mean, it just was changing by the hour. It really went quick.
I remember Wednesday was the day we made the change with craft service. And we were all a little this seems like overkill. They're going to serve us lunch. That's going to take forever. Oh, wait, what if, because we share a turnaround area and we share craft service with All That, which is a Nickelodeon show. And like the worst thing ever is when we all break at the same time. And sometimes that just happens. And if we were going to break at the same time and we had to serve lunches, but that's just the way it was. And so we were all kind of like, as ADs, like, that's a lot of, and then by Friday, it felt like old hat. Like by Friday, it seemed like, well, that makes a lot of sense. We don't want people touching all that. It was our new normal by Friday. And just to show how fast it went and how, on Monday, it was, in the sliding scale of like belief and disbelief. And then by Friday, everyone was pretty much on board. That Saturday, before the Friday, Jimmy and I and a bunch of the people from the office, we were at a bar Saturday night together. And then by the next Friday, we were done. We were done working. And Mike's daughter was in Europe.
Yeah.
And then finally by Saturday, they shut down the program and she probably got back the next Wednesday. And
that was a little stressful. And because that whole week too, there was so much, I think it's what Jimmy was saying and Robyn too. There was a palpable nervous energy on set. Nervous being defined by mean, obviously people worried about hearing about their shows get shut down. So of course everyone's worried about obviously their job, a paycheck. And then of course, like Jimmy said, someone is coughing or has a fever. And then it's like, well, is that the thing they keep talking about? Everything was just off a little bit. Everyone was just, everything was just off, dealing with our families, dealing with, all the different things. So it was,
it's weird to think about now because I haven't thought about it since it happened. And so to go back and think about how much we didn't know about what was going on is so interesting now, because now we're all like, have nothing to do but look at the internet all day and research.
And the big thing too, to piggyback, is like Mike said too, is our families. I mean, my kids' school was shutting down. Even if we were able to work, suddenly it becomes, well, who's going to watch my kids? Who I'm going to feel comfortable watching my kids? And my kids can't come in to work with me. So that was a driving factor as well. Once everyone's school started shutting down, and a lot of us have families, it was like, okay, well, this is all the more reason that we need to be accessible to our families, accessible to our loved ones, because I wouldn't feel right going to work every day and being like, oh, I just, come in for 8 hours and watch my kids for me, So, and plus at that point, our kids had to keep learning. I mean, everything was just transitioning over, and it was a lot to just try to deal with on a weekend and then go right back to work on a Monday.
Well, you mentioned that the original plan was shut down for 2 weeks. You were planning to take a week off anyway, delay the picking production back up for another week. Obviously, that's been extended.
Eight, 9.
Well,
I don't even.
You said March
track.
15th. I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, March 13th. I'm like,
March 13th
wow,
was because I remember my wife's birthday was March 16th, and I went out to dinner on March 14th, and that's the last time I've been out anywhere. I think was March 14th, but it's been the 13th is when we shut down.
And no plans. I mean, as far as anyone, there's no return date. Let's put it that way.
With every article I read, I'm just thinking, how.
It's the how, really,
trigger,
right? It's like the when is, the when is important, but it's the how. Even if we went back next week, the how is the fascinating part about how to, there's, anyone listening to this podcast has read the same articles we're all reading, and it's fascinating. It's scary. It's an intriguing concept to, address these stripped down stages, and how do we shoot a show in a stage that is normally on a good day, a petri dish, much less in the middle of a pandemic,
2 weeks before the pandemic hit, a plague whipped through our stage and took down about 22 of us. I think Mike and I included. I don't think Jimmy got it, but it was a 2-day thing where you just vomited, and then you were good 2 days later. But imagine if that had happened. That was only 2 weeks before, and none of us were like coronavirus, whatever. But it was crazy. But it just whipped through, and it got people from construction. It got executives. It got, obviously the ADs were everywhere, and we still don't really know what caused it.
No, one of our actresses got sick. We had to shut the show down for the day so we could, we reshot it on a Saturday. But Robyn's right. I forgot 2 weeks prior. Oh, it was brutal.
Could you imagine if it was that week? We would have flipped out. We all thought we had it.
Ooh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, now in the midst of a shutdown, tell me, how did the quarantine episode come about? What was the genesis? The genesis is, from what I understand, I'm gonna speak for our showrunner Chris Nowak, but the genesis at its core was everyone's at home. You have a bunch of artists at home, and what do artists do when they're home? They create. They just try to keep doing something because they always got to scratch that itch. Well, Ben Giroux, who plays the toddler, and of course Cooper Barnes plays Captain Man, Ben had the idea on the TikTok platform that it would be kind of fun if they did little skits where the toddler all of a sudden calls Captain Man, and they have a funny conversation. He punches him through the phone, ha ha ha. Ben's TikTok is 1.8 million followers or some crazy number. So they were getting some heavy hits. And for folks who don't know, sorry, Mike, the toddler is one of the villains on the show. He's not one of your minor actors who came up with this idea. So
that's true.
That's actually really
don't you all watch Henry Dangerous? That's actually a good point. Okay. No, the toddler is a grown man, 35 years old, and he does wear a diaper on the show. Okay. And why he had a toddler outfit at home, I'm still trying to get that answer from Ben. But and even Coop, why he had a mask. But they did this for fun, and Chris
I know why he had that mask.
So Chris was talking with Nickelodeon, Omar, and Shauna one day about it, and I believe the conversation was something like, "Have you guys seen Ben's TikToks? They're really funny." Yeah, they are really funny. That'd be funny to be an episode. Oh, yeah, it would be. Well, would it? Could we do that? Yeah, I guess. Wait, are you really serious? Quarantine episode? And Chris went, okay, I'll start writing it. And that basically within that was the seed. That was the beginning of the beginning of the end, if you will, of the quarantine episode.
Now, for folks who haven't seen the quarantine episode, for our listeners, basically everyone is alone talking to each other on Zoom or, whatever the technology is. We'll talk more about it, but there's a couple of exceptions, but basically everyone is by themselves. Is that primarily true, or were there exceptions or things we should bring up?
No, everyone, with the exception of the minors, they're with their families, obviously. But 1,000%, nobody left their house. Not one single person left their house to, do anything to make this episode. And that is anything we had to send, we shipped. Anything that had to be was delivered. No one left their house or made any unnecessary risks to get something. And that's the hand to God truth.
So then let's dive deeper into the planning and prep. What sort of technology did you guys use? How did it come together? What was your process for getting this episode off the ground?
I'll say this, while Chris was writing and putting it all together, it fell on Jimmy to then start trying to address that very issue. Because at that point, I'm just trying to read it, trying to even figure out how I'm going to, block this, quote unquote, and have a fight and sing a song and do a dance. But Jimmy can speak to the technical for sure.
And so as far as the technology goes, the technology was actually brought to us originally from Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon had just finished filming this town hall thing with Kristen Bell, and it was sort of like directed towards kids, and they had doctors talking about, to ease their fears of the coronavirus. So the producer of that show started working with Nickelodeon and saying, like, this is what I use, and this is how we got it to work, and here's how we think we can make it better. It's so funny because I just went back and looked at my phone, and like the first time I even talk about quarantine ever in my emails is April 2nd. And then from then on, it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails. So that's how many times I've been talking about it. But they brought the technology to us, and the basic idea was a lot like the Zoom template in that there would be 8 people on a screen at any given time. They were able to give us time code, and we could have the 8 actors interact with each other in real time, like we're doing right now. Each window isolates and records to a separate server the audio and the video, so the post-production can then pull that audio and video and use it to match up with the time code to do the episode. So no matter how we're interacting right now, in the end, it's all just separate channels that they can use. As we started to move forward, we started to do tests with the company, and the best way I can explain it is, if you're familiar with when Anderson Cooper interviews someone overseas and you're talking with them and then there's a minimal delay and then someone nods their heads and starts talking. The more we got into it, the more that we realized the software was probably better equipped for not a conversation, not a back and forth, because there's always going to be this delay in between when someone hears what I say and then they start talking and vice versa. So as we started to get closer and closer, by the time we got to the rehearsal week, the Wednesday that we started rehearsing, or the first Wednesday that we started, it was, let's just use Zoom for now while we work out the kinks and make this software better for our purposes. And we kept doing tests with it. And then it became, okay, well, we can't do 8 people. Maybe let's try 6 people on screen at a time. And then it was like, okay, well, 6 is going to be too hard. The less people that we bring onto the screen, the better the delay is. So then it came a point where we were going to lock in working with 4 people like we are right now. But the issue then became people at home would be logged into a YouTube channel where we could watch the 4 people, but that was on a 7-second delay. So imagine watching what's on in front of you, but seeing it 7 seconds delayed. So Mike would be watching his crew work, but 7 seconds delayed. So if he yelled cut, they would keep going for 7 seconds until they finally heard him yell cut. So the further we got into the rehearsal process using Zoom, the more we kept thinking, I don't know that this software is going to work. Like we were spending so much time trying to resolve all the issues that using this software was going to create. And all the while we're using Zoom going, why can't it just be more like this? We're talking in real time. We're communicating. There's no lag time. So that's where the genesis slowly became from working with the software that the network originally pitched to us to turning it into, possibly leaning towards using Zoom.
The other thing that Jimmy is saying too is it's multi-camera sitcoms live and die by the rhythm of their jokes and the ability to, comedy is a timing thing, right? It's lines come on top of another. our show, a lot of the magic for all you Henry Danger fans out there, obviously was we called it the dual dialogue between Jason and Coop, that they would just start talking over each other, and a lot of funny came from that. And of course that spilled into Danger Force. So as we were trying to use the software, and as we were whittling it down even 4 people in the room with the delays, we slowly understood, it's what Jimmy was saying, that we would not be able to achieve the comedy, the timing of the comedy, the execution of the comedy, without being in as much real time as could possibly be done. And so that drove the boat a lot on performance, and Nickelodeon obviously supported and understood that, that's the way our show works. So we needed that real time interaction, which is what, again, like I'm looking at you guys now on Zoom, and you can, everything's real time. Jokes we make amongst each other, we laugh at because it's real time. And that is, in the end, as we headed into that weekend, that's when we came across, we all got together with Nickelodeon and said, you know what, I think Zoom is the way to do this.
And on Zoom, were you still able to record separate video channels then, and that go into post, or are there other limitations that come with the system for what we try to do?
The first limitation with the Zoom platform is the ability to deliver in 1080p, which we cannot. We delivered at a 720p. And then I believe I'm doing a lot of tech talk here that I'll be dead honest, I'm not quite sure what I'm talking about. I'm just repeating what I heard. But then when it got delivered, I think it got upgraded a little bit. But still, when you watched on TV, even if you watched it on your 4K HD television, it looked like a Zoom screen. But even that, I never minded from a creative standpoint, nor did Chris, because we were never going to deceive our audience into believing that we weren't doing what you thought we were doing. I mean, you are looking at Luca's bedroom. You are looking at Hava's bedroom. You are looking at Dana's bathroom. You are seeing Terrence's bedroom / his closet, Cooper's garage, Michael Cohen's bedroom. So we never wanted to wink, like, yeah, we created a set. Everyone knew what we were doing. So we embraced that. So, and I think that was part of the magic of the episode as well, is that we pulled off a scripted episodic in the feel and look of what we are all very used to looking at now. I mean, it's almost jarring to see full HD on a big screen because I'm so used to having so many conversations like this. But that was a big part of it.
And Zoom doesn't record in 1080. So if you're trying to replicate what Zoom looks like, it almost looks more jarring to be 1080. And that's originally what was driving the boat to use the other company, was that we're going to have 1080p, we're going to have time code. But when it got to the point where we had 4 people in a room and we'd be shooting it in portions anyway, at what point does the time code matter anymore? If you're shooting it over the course of different days and over different hours, and then the 1080p part, this, like Mike said, this is what we're used to looking at. So it would seem jarring to see crystal clear video and trying to make that seem like, I think what sells it most is that it was shot on Zoom. It's supposed to look like Zoom. And for all intents and purposes, it was Zoom. I mean,
yeah. Yes. And what it did is, Robyn can speak to this, what Zoom allowed us to do, quite possibly more than anything, was the ability to replicate our stage on a Zoom platform. Meaning, we had to be able to have a way for our DP, our set designer, our art department director, Robyn herself, makeup, hair, wardrobe, to all be able to real time look at a frame. I mean, look at a camera setup. Check hair, last looks. The skateboard got bumped. The camera moved. All these different things. So we set up a way where Robyn would be in Zoom room number 1. Zoom room number 1 would be the filming room. Robyn would be in Zoom room number 2, doing last looks, doing her normal, assistant director function, getting everyone ready. But Rob, why don't you jump on, because you ran that thing like a champ.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing it without Zoom. From an 80s perspective, it was interesting. I had on my husband's computer, luckily I had 2 computers. My husband's computer, I ran Mike ran his room, but I could watch what was happening while he was filming. And on my computer, then I had the other room where I would set up the next scene with hair, makeup, wardrobe, like Mike said, and the DP and the art department. And then once they were set up, they could log off and I would just text them to come on back, or they could go watch in the other room, because there's basically 2 Zoom codes. So you could go to the other room and watch and see what's going on. And so Mike, if he needed me, he would just go, Robyn, and I just hit a button and go, yeah, Mike. He's like, And then he just say whatever he needed to say. I go, you got it. Or if something was going on over there and I could see, like a couple times I could see like they just stalled out, and then I could just come in and make a suggestion. It's like, hey, why don't we give this person a rest, and then let's do this here. Or it was just interesting because you're basically doing the same job as a first, as you're just doing on 2 computer screens. And because it was me and everybody was contained and I didn't have to run over all studio, it was very, very doable to have one AD do the job of basically all the ADs. It would have felt silly to have a second AD getting everyone ready when literally I would just basically watch Mike on the other computer screen, and I wouldn't even yell rolling and cuts. Mike would just do it himself because he was right there. Mike even held up the slate, like he held up his chicken scratch handwriting because he has terrible handwriting. And then he would write take 1 and he'd scratch it out and write take 2. That was basically it.
I kept them all. I kept them all as, I don't know, like as my badge of,
But because our crew was so small, we had the bare bones. Everybody kind of had everyone else's back. And plus, everyone's working from home. And we could tell this poor Spod didn't even have Wi-Fi. He was our DP. He was literally in like a van down by the river, just going from like coffee shop to his friend's hardware store. And he'd be like, Robyn,
stealing Wi-Fi.
Stealing Wi-Fi. He's like, when are we going to look at the next set? Okay, I got to drive someplace else. So he kind of was just like a creeper. Like what part? I think it was outside of a school stealing Wi-Fi. He just looked like a creeper in the van. But
he
made it through
one
the
time.
day.
We're like, where are you? He's like, I'm outside the air conditioning store.
He's in an air conditioning truck or something.
But he made it through the day, and then his Wi-Fi came back up like the next day.
Yeah,
his Wi-Fi came back up. It was fun in a weird way.
Once we got our rhythm,
yes. And the thing that was the weirdest was I was more exhausted at the end of the day than I was on set, because Zoom, it really takes a lot out of you to communicate this way, because you're missing the body language, you're missing the little nuances of how you communicate in the real world. And at the end of the day, when you just say, all right, good night, everybody, and you close it and suddenly it's just silent, and then you're like,
it was bliss.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot to keep track of, especially with 2 things going at once, because sometimes Mike needed something and then this was happening here, and it was fun and interesting.
Well, definitely, we were even right before we came on, Skid and I were talking about how much you take for granted just the basic, like you were saying, the basic communication that you do have on a stage. You can yell out for someone, they come running over. Water cooler conversations, for example, just those little side conversations. Anytime you wanted to get information, give information, talk to anybody, it had to be a text, an email, a Zoom, a fully concentrated effort just to say, Robyn, we need Cooper and Michael in here. Because that led to you having to text Cooper and Michael. They'd have to read their text you back. They'd have to log onto a screen. It was a very
and to not,
Robyn's right.
When you knock on a door and an actor says, yeah, I'm on my way, then you can just wait outside the door and then knock again if you have to, or see if they come out. But literally you're blind. You're like there's text you on my way, and you have no idea what they're doing and no idea when they're going to show up. And you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And, oh, thank God they showed up. But there's no you can't listen at the door, or you can't, I knew he was changing. Okay, he told me, there's nothing except blind faith that they will show up on the Zoom call that you wanted them to show up on. And they all did, but it was just stressful.
Well, yeah, it gave a whole new meaning to like being on time. Like we're a business of time. I mean, we have call times. We have a whole call sheet that is all about time. And then the production report, which is all about the time that happened. And never was it more important for you to be on Zoom at 9:00. It wasn't like, oh, I know I can arrive 15 minutes late because Robyn will take care of this, or Mike doesn't need to deal with that, or Jimmy. I mean, you had to be on Zoom at 9:00. I mean, it was because that was the only way to have contact.
And everybody who was a not participant was watching. All the Nickelodeon execs and people you don't usually see on set, where you could just kind of do your thing and you get the finished product and like, great finished product. But here they're literally staring at you working. And you forget about it during the day, but they're people you don't normally interact with are literally just staring at you working. And that's a lot of pressure.
There's 30 people behind the scenes. So 4 of us talking, but forgetting that there's 30 people behind the cameras right now watching us record.
Yes.
I mean, I assume they're cooking dinner for their kids and like doing laundry, like as if they're at Crafty, but you don't know that,
And there's no other shows on. I mean, we were the only show in town at that point. So anybody who had any part of our show was tuning in and watching the record session because there was nothing else filming that day or that week or since, honestly, I don't think.
Yeah. And they normally wouldn't come to stage and watch.
Oh,
Right.
of course. Jimmy sent out a wonderful email to all of us. I think the day before we were going to go to shoot, he sent this great email with all the first call times. It was just, I think he said, "Listen, gang, I could not be prouder of what we've all done. Congratulations. You are truly the hardest working crew in Hollywood and the only crew working in Hollywood."
Well, there was a lot to prove, I mean, it was the decision to switch to Zoom happened the day before we started shooting. So there was a lot of nerves on my part to be like, is this going to happen? I mean, until we shot that first day and we were like, oh, this is going to happen. We can do this, but
Yes.
Leading up to that night before where we made the decision to switch the format, there was a lot of nervous energy as to let's hope Zoom doesn't crash. Let's hope the server's not down, because we weren't working hand in hand with Zoom. They didn't have like a tech working with us and overseeing everything. It was like if we logged in that morning and Zoom was down for usual maintenance, we had a problem.
Oh, I mean, I had last week, my cable went out for my internet service, Spectrum went out in my neighborhood, went down for like 7 hours. And first of all,
could you imagine?
Oh, well, first of all, the kids were dying. My girls, because one's in college, one's high school, and they were like, we need internet. Like this is non-negotiable. I'm like, they got it. But then I went with Robyn just said, I literally got cold chills down my back thinking if that would have happened on one of our shoot days, rehearsal days, I mean, you're done. I mean, you are literally, it's like I always said to Jimmy, and as all of you listening, I'm sure know, 1,000 things go wrong on stage every day. 1,000 things. Lights have to get fixed and set dressing and props. So going into this, like Jimmy was saying, 1,000 things are going to go wrong doing this, but you do not have the ability in the moment just to be run over with a C-stand or fix it with a wipe or a this or a Greek this or do that. I mean, it all had to be handled by the actors in their space. The actor, our kids had to maneuver their camera. Our kids had to set up their bedroom. Our kids had to get the props ready, the set dressing, wardrobe, put their masks on. I mean, it was a huge hats off to the kids. I mean, Michael and
and the moms,
and the moms, the
families, the kids' moms,
and like Jimmy said, the disruption to all of our lives in terms of, I mean, we were grateful and so happy to be working and doing it, but all of this under the shadow of your kids still going to school, your kids, right before this started, Jimmy was like, oh, I forgot to tell my kids, don't run in here. I'm doing a podcast. I told my daughter right before I came out here, I said, look, don't walk in the garage. I'm going to be on a podcast. So it was very, Robyn has her 2 kids. It's trying to work, much less shoot a show, and still run your family responsibilities underneath the shadow of a global pandemic was challenging.
It was challenging, but it was nice. I remember when I was done with it, I was like, it felt good to work. It felt good to do that. And it felt good when we were done as well to go back to the Groundhog's Day that we're all living over and over again. But it felt good to just do something so different and interesting in my own house. I really liked it. I'd love to do another one.
No, creatively, it was, I've always said from a directorial point of view, probably the most personal, because you were so involved with everything. Like, in the multi-camera or anything else, you walk on a stage and there's a set. It's been built. It's been, Chris has approved Tristan's drawings and Bonnie's set dressing and construction and the set. We started on, Jimmy said that Wednesday, and it's like you, Skid, looking at my frame right now and going, okay, all right, so it looks like that bookcase over there, we got to take care of this. The lighting's kind of funny. You got a big head coming. I mean, we had to build this literally from the ground up. I mean, invent the wheel for all intent purposes. And like Robyn said, and the parents and the kids and Cooper and Michael and the guest stars were doing it as well. I mean, literally trying to create. But within that creation, everyone had ownership. Like the actors were getting excited. Like I remember Luca's bedroom. He was like, oh, wait a minute. No, Bose, this would be a mess. Bose doesn't act like that. So he took ownership of his set. Hava did, Dana did, Terrence had great ideas of how his closet would look more like Miles's closet. To a certain extent, they fleshed out a lot of their characters just by definition of trying to create what they had at home to mimic, what their character would be. And from that standpoint, it was creatively just a real buzz, a real high of everyone coming together that way.
Talk to me more about who did come together. You talk about having a limited crew. You mentioned some of the specific folks, but what departments were involved, and then what accommodations they have to make for these circumstances?
Well, first of all, Jimmy, I guess Jimmy was like the man. Jimmy was the grand conductor of the whole thing. So you were responsible for trying to put that all together. So probably, first and foremost, I guess you started with Tristan and Spod. I guess.
Well, it actually started. So when I first built the budget, they were like, let's keep the number down. We're shooting from home. It's not a real episode. It's a special. So it became me and my associate producer because I needed help to do this. And it was like, okay, well, we've got a director. We're still not sure if we need a first AD. They're going to have to do their own hair and makeup. So let's bring on hair head, makeup head. We're going to need our costume designer to pick and choose what they think their characters will wear. So we brought in a costume designer, and then it became the DP was automatic because he was going to have to teach them how to shoot this from home. Let's bring in our set decorator because she can help the kids design their look. And we were moving forward originally without a production designer. And if you know anything about, which you probably don't, our production designer is as smart as they come. He knows everything about everything. If we're going forward doing something that we've never done before, I feel 100 times better having him on board. It's like going into surgery without the smartest doctor. I feel like he needs to be there with us. So we brought in him, but less than 10 people, maybe 12 tops. And that includes myself.
We had a studio teacher, obviously.
Our studio teacher who watched the kids wherever they went. She went from room to room with them, watched them wherever they were at. But maybe a dozen people. That was about all we had. And it was all the department heads that we needed to do it. And it was a small crew. Even when you look at the credits after it aired, it was like, boop, boop, boop.
It was cute. I watched the credits. I'm like, oh, it's so tiny.
It did. It went really fast. That's funny you said it. It did. I made a point to watch the credits just to see how fast it went. And a lot of people got their own card. It was cool. I think Robyn I think you and Jimmy shared your card, right? It was
that's right.
Cool. You needed people also to, you always hear think outside the box and all that kind of stuff, but you really needed people to think.
We had a script supervisor.
Script supervisor, Evie.
Right. We had Evie.
But we truly needed all hands on deck because there was not an idea that was not thought about or not, taken. No suggestion was just dismissed outright. Everyone, when Robyn came on board, she brought a head full of ideas. Tristan, who Jimmy was referring to, our art department designer, knows the show upwards and downs, and we needed his vast knowledge to create makeup and hair to teach the kids, wardrobe. It really was. It became, like Robyn said, I think for a bunch of artists, creative types that were in lockdown for about 4 weeks before we shot it, everyone really wanted to scratch that itch. People were ready to go. The consult day, when we set up everyone's sets, was really glorious. That was a fun day. It really was. I think Chris said in that Variety article, it was like trying to, we were putting a play together in a treehouse. We just used what we had. From that standpoint, it was great.
The Variety article, I think, also mentioned that you mailed their masks to the actors so that they would have those, but not the costumes and not any more of that. Did you also mail other props and things, or what sort of gift package did they get to pull it off?
I can. So the way that we sort of pulled it off was we knew we needed the masks. We knew that we were going to have the kids transform. So we thought, okay, well, we can sell it with the mask. But then the more we thought about it, the only way you can sell with the mask is if they're framed super close like this. So if you're pulled back in the shot, we thought, okay, well, they're going to need the outfits. And the outfits are expensive. They're very expensive to develop, to create. They're all original designs. So we thought, we don't want to send those. So what else can we send to sort of sell that they're in costume? And the episode before we shut down, the kids all had Danger Force tracksuits where they had Danger Force like track pants, jackets with a Danger Force logo. We thought, okay, well, let's send that to everybody. So the way we sold it was they have their masks, they had their jackets and their pants, and that would be their superhero look when they transformed. We were able to send those costumes to the people who lived in town, and there was another one who lived out of state that we sent it to as well. But as far as the care packages in town, it was the one thing that they told us was some of them needed good computers. Like some of them had 7-8-year-olds with broken cameras, broken screens. So we were able to get loaner laptops. We got Ethernet cables because the best connection we could have would be to directly connect to the internet. So we would send those packages off, and then earpods, the earbuds or AirPods is what they call them for Apple, because there came a point where they had to sing a song, and we thought, well, how do we get them to be able to hear the song without actually hearing the song over camera? So we just established that the AirPods were part of the characters' props, like the characters were just wearing AirPods while they did the scene. But those were basically it. Like Coop, we had to deliver light bulbs. He was out in his garage and he was worried that his light bulbs were going to bust out. Just random silly things that we sent. But I don't think we didn't not send one thing to every cast member. Everybody needed something in order to pull this off.
But what was super cool was like on that consult day, like the big thing about doing this was after 5 minutes of watching it, everyone's going to be like, okay, well, this is cute. It's a Zoom room, they're doing their thing. But it was really important to us that the show still needed to be the show. Like you really still needed to watch an episode of Danger Force that has fights, that has good comedy, has all this stuff. So Chris wrote a script that was Danger Force. I know he wrote obviously to what, the quarantine, the restrictions, but it still was, he took a lot of great liberty and presented comedy. So it became upon us, like he wrote this great bit where Coop's trying to, Captain Man's talking about the Swellview criminal code. And obviously Cooper Barnes does not have the Swellview criminal code book in his home. So what happened was on consult day, Tristan said, well, do you have a book? Coop, yeah, I got a book. He's all right, measure it. Send me the measurements. Sends the measurements to Tristan. Tristan on Photoshop creates a book jacket that is the Swellview criminal code. Tristan sends that to Kinko's. Kinko's preps it. Kinko's delivers it to Coop. Coop unpacks it, wraps it around, and voila, prop. Behind Hava, her character is still trying to find her phone. And so Hava thought it'd be a great idea that she has a poster on her wall about all the locations where she's been looking for her phone. So Tristan creates a poster on Photoshop that way, gets delivered to Kinko's, delivered to Hava's house. So that's how we were reinventing the wheel as we went. Like Michael Cohen was supposed to be in Canada, his character. And, before Chris wrote, he called Michael and, was like, hey, Michael, what do you have at home? And it turns out Michael's an avid rock climber, ice climber, and he's got all those tools and equipment. So Chris wrote that in the script. Michael adopted a new puppy. We'll write your new puppy in, so it was that, that kind of thing as well. Just trying to, do with what we had, but also figure out ways to make this stuff work.
That puppy caught my eye. So that wasn't a loner animal just for quarantine. Made it out to you'd have to call up animal folks for that animal wrangler to bring that puppy over.
No, and it's funny. Michael I was doing a live stream with Michael on Instagram, and he said, he goes, I have a whole new appreciation for the animal trainers that when we do use animals, he's like, I had no, Bodie had to rest. He had to, he has got to eat. He's got to drink, got to walk him. He's like, these animals that come to the center are so well trained and so well taken care of. And he just was laughing about, he's like, wow, I had no idea how, introducing Bodie into his first episode.
Yeah, doing multiple takes of the same thing. It's like, dog's like, why are you holding me and talking for so long?
So you had 1 day of consulting with all the actors to get their sets in order, review their makeup, hair, wardrobe, etc. Then how many days of actual filming did you do?
2 days. We shot it in 2 days, and all restrictions applied. 9.5 hours. Kids went to school teacher, lunch, recreation. We did not shortcut any of those types of rules. We still shot under the same regulations we have on stage.
And all of your actors are folks who had been on the show before. Is that correct? Or was anyone a guest star just for this episode?
They're all have been on the show before. We had our 2 news reporters who are on almost every other episode, and then 3 of our main villains that come back so many times.
Other stories from the filming days. You spoke about the 1,000 things that go wrong. Any particular challenges that came up that you guys had to manage through?
Like Jimmy said, a couple of times, it was sometimes, Zoom is software, and by definition, software can be buggy. And so a couple of times we had some moments where somebody couldn't log into Zoom, and we were starting to get those, not panic, but you'd get that moment of like, oh, God, if they don't log in, what do we do? So there was a couple times, I think it was on day 2, wasn't it, Robyn, where one of the kids was having trouble getting in and we had to.
That was the promo day.
Oh, promo day. That's right. Yeah. Promo day. Zoom was being particularly.
Yeah. It was crazy. What worked the 2 days before didn't work on the 3rd day, which was our promo day. And Mike, we're texting and we're like, oh, thank God this wasn't on during the shoot. We finished the promo day. We made everything that they wanted, but it backed us up for a good half hour, almost 45 minutes. And we still don't know why she could log into one room and not log into the other, but we just switched everything around, and it was, yeah. So there's a couple things that went wrong. We had such a small crew, and you go to a film set, you see a lot of people waiting around, and you're like, why do you need all these people on a film set? And now, I always knew why I needed them, but there are things that got missed that, boy, if this person was there, we wouldn't have missed that. Like, we had the art department, but we didn't have a prop person. And so who's watching the props? Maybe it's a script supervisor, maybe it's the actor, but that's not what they normally do. They watch the continuity for other things, and props watch props continuity. And who's watching the costume continuity? It's not the costume designer, it's the on-set costumer. So there was little things that were Tristan and Chris, our costume designer, that's not what they do. They don't look at the minutia. And so there were little things that I would watch on my computer, and then every once in a while, we all had each other's backs. And so people from different departments would chime in and text me. It's like, oh, what about the AirPods? And there was one part in the episode where Luca looks down and he's like, cheap quarantine adhesive, and he didn't have a patch on. And the story behind that is, Luca, he grows like a weed. So they sent 2 jackets over, one that did have the patch on and one that didn't have the patch on, because in case, but they were packed up and sent, and it's normally our costume supervisor, Katie, would have caught that in a second if she was there. But because we had such a skeleton crew, and it's the mom and the kid, they don't know what's supposed to be there. And then, Luca's filming like this, you don't see the patch, and then suddenly, we've been shooting half the day, and then we realize we don't have a patch. And so our showrunner just made a line that, cleared it all up. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you know why, Rob? It's because the jacket was designed, the episode Schwaz pretends he's Bose. So we designed the jacket for Michael. So when we sent it to Luca put it on, and
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because Luca never wore the other episode.
We didn't realize until after we shipped it that Luca never even had an outfit. We just grabbed the extra jacket and sent it, and then after the fact, we were like, oh wait, Luca never wore an outfit.
But it's all those things. It's like, well, that's why you need 100 people on a set. So it's interesting, and it kind of adds to the charm, because it's it's the first time we've ever done anything like this. Mistakes are going to happen. But
you know what? That's a really good point, though, because don't you think maybe that really lent to? You spoke earlier of the the exhaustion at the end of the day, and maybe that's what it was too. Is that I think all of us we're exercising muscles of our brain that normally, like you say, we don't.
It was my job to make sure everyone went into their Zoom settings and clicked Access HD. That's not something I do as a first AD. And guess what? I forgot twice. And they filmed, and I was like, did you guys do this? Okay, bye. And apparently it didn't matter, but a couple times I forgot. That was my job, and that's not my job as a first AD normally, but it's because I was prepping them. That's one of the things I needed to prep them to make sure that they click that button on their Zoom settings. And so it's little things like that you're using the same, you want to do the same good job, but with the limited things that you have. Evie, our script supervisor, they would be like, oh, Evie, what does she have in her hand there? And she's like, I don't have my camera. Normally she can just take frame by frame by frame, so she can go back and cycle through. And here she's just watching and doing it the old fashioned way. Trying to remember, right. Was it in this hand? Was it in this hand? And we just take for granted. No
time code.
Right. You just take for granted that everything's exactly how it was until you ask her. And she's like, oh, I think the left hand, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's funny.
And throughout the day, I think part of the other stress, Billy Butler, who's our post-production supervisor, to answer your earlier question, Skid, we had 3 different people recording on 3 different computers just to make sure whoever on any particular take had the best internet at that time. Because sometimes you'd be in the middle of a take and Cooper would glitch, Haven would glitch, Dana would glitch, Terrence. And when we got done, we'd be like, Billy, talk to all the editors. Did anyone have that clean? And sure enough, someone would have it clean, and you're like, oh gosh, okay, thank God. It was very much like at the end of the day, you really want to hear from Billy that, because after Zoom records, it goes up to a cloud, and then you got to download it back out. So I was like, it wasn't your typical day of like, the camera card and knowing right then and there you had your stuff. It was a big
A lot of
leap
blind
faith.
faith. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
A lot of trust in the system. And
Was post-production expedited on this then to get it on the air, or did you take a normal? I don't know how long ago you actually did this film.
We filmed it on the
Jimmy can
20th
tell
and
you this.
21st, I believe, of April. So we finished shooting on the 21st of April, and it aired. They wanted to have it air May 2nd, and we were like, that's impossible. It's going to be crazy to do it. So it ended up airing the 8th or the 9th, whatever the Saturday was. But
Which was just as crazy.
Yeah, that's just as crazy. But I mean, what is it? That's less than 3 weeks, right? It's 2.5 weeks.
Oh yeah. 2.5.
So 2.5 weeks from the time we filmed it to the time it aired.
And
That's pretty expedited.
we did color it. We did have to send it to our
It got laughed.
laugh track. We had it. It's like what Robyn said. Again, there were so many shortcuts we had to take, or we were cutting so many corners just by definition of how we were doing it and the crew we had. But you still had to shoot it right. I mean, you can't just if behind somebody a whole rack falls down, you got to stop and put it back up and try to match. And mind you, these were not hot sets. Michael Cohen has a funny story where at the end of consult day, he had a bunch of stuff on his bed because he used his bedroom, and Tristan goes, "Okay, great. So can you just leave that there, Michael, then?" And Michael's like, "Well, no, I got to go to bed. That's my bed." And so Tristan goes, "Oh, okay, well, take a bunch of pictures." One time while we were shooting, Cooper, picked up his computer to show us, I think,
my God.
show his wife or something like that. And we were like, "Oh my God," but this is just the stuff that
we had to reset everything. The lighting is like,
those were the parameters we had to shoot with, and same with post. It's not like, okay, post, you have 2 weeks. Let's shortcut a good edit. Let's shortcut the special effects. Let's shortcut the color. It's like, no, they had to, in the time they had, pull it off. And my God, they pulled it off. I mean, it was glorious.
And even we forgot too that at some point during the shoot, we had a skateboard that has a logo of a company on it. So we were shielding that logo during the record session. And then somewhere along the way, the shield fell over and we could clearly see the skateboard. So we actually had to do a plate and record a plate of it covered up. And then our visual effects person had to go in and insert a plate for, I think he told me it was 8 gigabytes worth of footage that he had to do. So it was a pretty long run of footage that he had to clean up and insert a plate into Zoom to cover up this logo for the rest of the episode. So we still took a little bit of the old way to incorporate it into Zoom, and we couldn't get out without shooting a plate.
Isn't that hilarious? And and that goes to Robyn's point. On a given episode, that skateboard falls over. Rick Cohen or JR, RJ, I mean, they are on it like hawks. I mean, before the take's even over, they're running up to you going, we got a problem. But in the confines we were in, it just got lost, which is, again, to Robyn's point about, there is a reason all those people are there on stage. Because
one of our network people caught it and pointed it out to me. They were like, is that logo cleared on that skateboard? I'm like, no, it's covered. I'm like, oh, no, it's not.
be right back.
Yeah, exactly. BRB.
Yeah.
Winston had a great story. You were asking about funny stories. Winston, who plays one of our intrepid reporters, well, as luck would have it, when he was doing his scene across the street, I guess there was some construction going on. So after the take, and part of Winston's gag on the show was he had to be just like all of us. I mean, in theory, I have shorts on. I do. I can vouch I have shorts, but you don't know. So we wrote this funny gag in there when we were rehearsing. It was in the script that he was wearing just silly boxer shorts underneath his nice formal suit. So the story is, Winston, you could hear it in the background. So after the take was over, Winston put a mask on, ran outside his house across the street with his suit coat and his silly boxers on, and was like, "Guys, please, can you give me a half hour without the chainsaw?"
Oh, I didn't hear that story.
He's got video of it. It's hilarious. I'll send you the video of it.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
funniest
it's hilarious.
thing. I mean, can you imagine these guys? They were like, "Oh my God, what's this guy doing? Like, what is happening right now?" And here's Winston going, "I'm trying to shoot a TV show," and they're like, "TV show? What? Have you lost it, pal?" I had a neighbor actually asked me a week afterwards, was like, "I have to ask, what have you been doing? We've been hearing you yelling and clapping and screaming." And I was like, shooting a TV show,
That's hilarious.
Oh, so silly.
One of my favorite things about shooting it was seeing everyone's kids come into the background at one time or another during the shoot. and people were just like, I got to go cook dinner. I'll be right back. Or they text me, like, text me when we're up, Robyn, I have to go, when somebody was driving to Palm Springs. But everyone was, had to live their lives. And like, I remember she would go dark, and when you ask her a question, she'd have it muted and she'd pop up, and you see her kids running in the background, and she'd be like, she'd give you hand signals about what you needed to know and then pop back off. But yeah, it was fun.
It was cool. The night we wrapped, the Tuesday night we wrapped, was, Robyn was, or me was giving and that's a wrap to Cooper Barnes, Michael Cohen. And what was kind of cool, Skid, was seeing like the Zoom format, like when you turn off your camera, you're not there. And so when I would say cut, it was fun seeing all the boxes start appearing of the crew.
Clapping.
And when the boxes, clapping. And when the boxes appeared, Jimmy, he had his son and daughter, hanging off him. Chris Nowak had his 2 sons. Tristan's family was behind him. Robyn, your son was behind you. That was very gratifying seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know what you're talking about. It almost was, almost choked you up a little bit just seeing, because on stage,
it's so personal.
Families are so, on stage, there's no, you don't bring your son or your
Well,
kids
you're your
or,
job.
You're
the first,
right.
You are your job. You're not a mother. You're not a this. You're not a that. You're the first AD. You're the director. And every once in a while at Crafty, you get to talk about your life, but you are your job. And then here you get to see, oh, you're not just your job.
It kind of highlighted what we did. It was the perfect capper on Wrap Night to see all the different families coming in and clapping and wishing everyone a good job. So, and a couple times even Chris's sons, like after a take, I would say cut, and then Chris would pop on. And like his boy be sitting there, behind Chris giving thumbs up, and I was like, well, Sam said that was a good take, Chris. I think we're using it, So it had a very much, a couple times poor Jimmy would have to be juggling 1,000 balls, and all of a sudden his camera would pop back on, and it was like his daughter, and she would be like looking, and then Jimmy come back in, it truly was. It's like I said, our life was still happening in the midst of shooting a TV show.
What I did a lot in the prep room is I would come on with a funny hat or flower in my hair, and then everybody would get into it, and they would come and then have like a funny hat, and then we'd go to the main room, and then we'd all wear funny hats, and then everyone was like, I want to wear a funny hat. And at one time Mike got into it. He wore bunny ears, and it was just kind of fun just to like mix it up and make the kids laugh, because it's all for the kids, the Danger Force. So.
I tell you, those kids, you can't say enough about, here we are, we're grown professionals. We've all been in this business a long time. And these kids are all 12, 13, 14. To be told that, after the show got off to a great start, our ratings have been fantastic. We were just building that rhythm and camaraderie and friendship. And then to just be taken away, we always say in our business, we're used to time off. Sometimes you have months off because it's just the nature of our business. But they were kids and they were building friends with each other and all of us. And so then to be put in quarantine, shoot an episode, and then have to be in any given moment, any particular crew member, honestly, that it says a lot about them and their parents. And that's, not a moment goes by when we were shooting it that I thought, these kids, it's amazing. The maturity that they had throughout it was amazing.
Yeah, agreed.
So what's next for Danger Force?
Stay tuned. We don't know. By all accounts, Jimmy, you can speak to this, but by all
we'll be
accounts,
back. We'll be back.
Oh, the show.
Yeah, we'll be back. There,
you're going to have us for 5 years. Just
yes.
when
they're
that
obviously
starts, I'm not sure.
Right.
Next
There's
year we
obviously
do our
talk
podcast
of
again.
there's talk of us coming back. It's just a matter of when it's. No matter what, we shut down before we shot. We were picked up for 13 episodes initially. We shot 6 of them. So in theory, right now, we still have 7 more episodes left of our season 1 that we have yet to shoot. It just comes down to when the world opens up, when we're allowed to go back, and then what the plan is and what that looks like. I think even if the world opens up, the question remains, what does new production look like? And I think it might take a little bit of time. 1, allow the world to open up, but then 2, start to come up with an idea of what post-COVID filming looks like. Because I don't think we know right now. We have ideas of how to minimize contact and, whether it's anything that we can do virtually. But at this point, I don't think anyone knows. So I think it's going to take time, months, I think, to sort of flesh all of that out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
We're all waiting with the same questions. Understood. But pretty interesting, again, what you guys were able to pull off with those challenges. And what you said about crew and bringing folks together. It's really an impressive effort.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much. It's one of those things, we're proud of every episode because every episode has its own, moments. But I will say this is the most probably challenging thing we've ever done. And then by definition, one of the most rewarding because, leading up to it was stressful. It was tough. And then when it came off and to see it air and again, on my Instagram page, seeing all the kids' feedback was honestly overwhelming. It truly was. I mean, there were so many wonderful comments. And the big headline of all those comments was, thank you for making our quarantine a little better.
Aww.
And to be able to say that some kid that none of us, I will probably never meet in my lifetime in Brazil or Europe or even in America, to know that at least for a little bit, gave them a song to sing, a dance to dance, an episode to laugh with in the midst of what we're going through. I don't think I'll ever have that in the rest. I hope I don't have that in the rest of my career, meaning no more pandemic, but it was truly that alone was worth the price of everything. It truly was.
Mike, you mentioned your Instagram. Tell folks where they can go if they want to see the photos you post from set. I know I'm a follower. I've been, you do quite a bit of sharing about the show. Where can people go to get that?
My tag is MikeCaron_LA because somebody else took Mike Caron. I don't know who that was. I want it back. But so I came up with the _LA. I started season 5 of Henry Danger. It occurred to me that from me as a kid, not to divulge my age, but say when Batman was on back in the 60s and 70s, for me to have the access that I give the kids to our set, I would have blew my brain. I mean, to see, Batman, respond to my comment would have made me fall over. And so it occurred to me that, at first I did it just to sort of, dip my water into a social media presence. But then as the kids were responding and then the cast was having fun making our fun videos and I show them how we did it in the green screen, it really took off. And the highlight has been what I said, it's the communication with the fans. It's the instant communication to air an episode. And then every week I'll post on my story, what did you think of the episode? And I just get bombarded with all the reactions and the questions and the thoughts and the comments. And our showrunner, Chris, is very involved with Instagram as well, CJ Nowak. And of course, there's Robyn Not Robyn, Jimmy Brooks 24. And on
my
all
page
of our,
is nothing.
But it's my light bulb went off when I realized how I could have this contact with the fans, which I adore about it. So thanks for shouting that out. It's really turned into a work of pure delight, posting the stuff and then reading the comments and then interacting with the fans that way.
Speaking of the fans, is there any spoilers you can share with them about what they can expect when Danger Force does come back for the rest of the season?
I will say that the last episode that we did, it was a fun one. It was a special one. So when we come back,
they will not be disappointed.
They will not be disappointed. We get back into production, everybody. As I say on all my comments on Instagram, #stay tuned, because you do not want to be the person that misses that episode. Trust me.
Well, guys, thanks very much for coming on today. Appreciate taking time out of your busy quarantine days and catch us up on what was happening behind the scenes. Thanks, everybody.
My days are actually very busy. Thank you very much.
I will say the time has went remarkably fast. You said March 13th, and I looked at my watch literally, and it says, whatever, March or May 15th. That actually shocked me because, the days go remarkably fast. They really do.
They do. I'm sorry, could you do your outro again? Do you want your outro again?
We totally pooped all over that.
Listeners, please share your feedback. You can send your email comments to skid, SKID, at belowtheline.biz. That's BIZ. If you're an iTunes user, please rate us. It really helps us reach new listeners. And if you're on Facebook, you can find photos and other behind-the-scenes materials at Podcast Below the Line. Finally, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Pod Below the Line. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. Logo's available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Listeners, thanks again for supporting the show. I've got a couple more episodes in the works discussing how the industry is reacting to COVID-19. Hope you'll join us again next week.
Technically, am I the only below the line person here?
I mean, and me, I guess.
Whatever.
They can't be on the show.
Yeah, they deem it worthy of their presence on this one. Thanks, guys, for coming down from the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.